You're tuned back into Agriculture Today, and we start today's show with Roger McEowen, K-State and Washburn Law Professor. Roger, thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Thanks for having me, Shelby.
The One Big Beautiful Bill Act has introduced several new things, and one of those happens to be a savings account.
Yeah, this is a new savings vehicle to help parents of newborns build a foundation of wealth for their children. And these are called Trump accounts. And they are universal child savings accounts. And this has never been done before. So this is the first, at least federal initiative of its kind. And it's something I think that new parents are going to want to look at.
And how are the funds invested?
Well, once these really kick in, basically starting January 1 of next year, parents can open a Trump account for children that are born from 25, 26, 27, and 28. So after 24 and before 29. These are just temporary as of right now. And the parents and the child have to have Social Security numbers. They have to be U.S. citizens. And one of the big features of these accounts is that the government's going to seed it. The first $1,000 in the account is going to be a contribution from the government, and that's going to be adjusted annually for inflation. So next year it'll be a little bit more, and then a little bit more for the accounts that are started in those out years. And the annual contributions are capped at $5,000 per beneficiary every year. That's on an after-tax basis, so you don't get a tax deduction to put them in. This is after tax. And to further incentivize the savings, the parent's employer can contribute $2,500 to the account. Now, that's not in addition to the $5,000. That counts toward the $5,000 cap, and that's on a tax-free basis. And any employer contributions, again, that's not included in income for the employee, so that's why I said it's on a tax-free basis. The funds, they're going to be invested, this is a specification in the law, in low-fee U.S. equity index mutual funds. And that should provide, I think the idea behind that is to provide diversification and make it low cost and keep things simple.
And when can you withdraw?
Well, withdrawals are not permitted before the beneficiary reaches age 18, and that is really kind of the cornerstone of the whole program. They're designed to ensure that funds are available for that child's transition into adulthood. Now, there are some limited exceptions. Funds can be rolled over from one Trump account into another Trump account or to an ABLE account. Those are accounts for disabled beneficiaries. And so Congress also in the OBBBA, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, they did loosen up some of the restrictions with respect to ABLE accounts to make them more attractive. So if you have a child with a disability, you can move the funds into that type of account. And distributions could also be allowed to correct and withdraw contributions that exceeded the annual limit. And then, of course, if the beneficiary dies before turning age 18, withdrawals are permitted in that instance. But you've got to have one of these exceptional circumstances to be able to withdraw the funds before the beneficiary turns 18.
How do you suspect firms will market this?
Well, that could cut both ways. That's a good question. One, the temporary nature of this could limit the incentive for firms to promote these Trump accounts. I think the answer is going to be really, it depends. On one hand, there is a strong incentive for financial institutions to get involved. There's a new government-backed savings program, and the seed contribution up front, that should be pretty attractive to new clients and help these firms attract clients that are interested in these. And financial institutions typically compete to offer and administer these new government-sponsored savings plans, such as, for example, the 529 plans that have been out there, the college savings plans, or health savings accounts, because those products bring in new deposits with them and can lead to broader investment relationships with that particular firm. And I think that's likely what's going to happen here. They're not going to promote them as a standalone package, just simply because I don't think there's enough money in them, given how the funds have to be invested. They can't generate sufficient fees on them on a standalone basis. But as part of a broader package tied into other types of retirement accounts that are long-term and permanent in nature, then, yeah, I think that might work. So you, for example, could open a Trump account, and the bank that opens that might be the first to offer that family a checking account or a debit card or a mortgage down the line, because likely these are going to be young families starting out in marriage and starting a family that create these accounts. So they would be in line to maybe get that first mortgage, debit card, those types of things. And I could see it being tied into that. But again, the short-term nature of these right now, that's going to cause, I think, some brokerage firms to pause and think their strategy. But we'll see how it works out.
What else is important for people to consider when it comes to Trump accounts?
Well, what happens with the funds, of course, when the beneficiary turns 18, and that's the way that the program is structured, so that when the beneficiary turns 18, the account effectively turns into a traditional IRA, and then at that point in time, the beneficiary can manage the account under your standard rules that apply to traditional IRAs. So you could convert it to a Roth, you couldn't convert it to a 401k, and the whole chassis of a Trump account is that it's a custodial IRA. It's not a 401k. And so the transition at age 18 is the transition to an IRA. That's the path for the account's future. And so it's a good start on getting an IRA at the time you turn 18. But the key to this whole thing is, will Congress turn it into a permanent vehicle in the stable of investment choices that people have? And if so, I think this could be a pretty big deal, because if I take, let's just round it off, say 20 years, $5,000 a year, you put some growth on that, yeah, you're going to graduate high school and there's going to be well over $100,000 in this account. You could start to fund things with that, and that could be very helpful as getting people started in life. So that's the whole point of this. I hope it works out. We'll just see what Congress does with it in future years.
Roger, you mentioned that some firms might be a little bit hesitant about this. Can you go into some more detail?
I think the level of promotion for brokerage firms is going to depend on the rules and regulations that are established for the accounts, and we haven't seen those yet. And the plan is, the announcement has been made, is that those rules are going to be forthcoming either this fall or early in 2026, when you can actually start creating these accounts and putting money in them. Now, when they do come out, the more straightforward the rules are, the easier it's going to be for financial institutions to offer these accounts and market them. And while the accounts might be beneficial for consumers, financial institutions are going to have to make sure there's a clear path for their own profitability, whether that's through management fees on the invested assets or the ability to cross-sell other products, like I mentioned before. I think if they can find a way to package with other products that they're marketing to clients, this will work. If Congress could turn these into a long-term vehicle rather than just the 4 years, that's going to help too. So the firms are going to have to figure out how they're going to create materials and explain the benefits of the accounts and how they work, and figure out whether they can push them as a long-term wealth-building vehicle and with that type of potential. So we'll see. The dirt's going to be in the details, as they say, but the first step's going to be to see what the regs are when they come out in a few months.
Roger, something else that our listeners might be curious about, the USDA has put a report out that we have record corn crop this year, and what are we going to do with the existing inventory? What should producers be concerned about right now?
Yeah, and I just published a blog article on this. It's also on Ag Manager website through the Department of Ag Econ at K-State. And you got a couple of things going on here. You've got carryover, and then you've got what's predicted to be a bumper crop. Now, we'll see, but we've had favorable weather conditions and, of course, advanced farming techniques and strategic planting decisions that are coming together all at once, and it looks like we're going to have a bumper harvest. So that's going to present a challenge for the sector. And the fundamental question is not whether the infrastructure can handle the volume, but how the nation's grain storage and the logistics systems absorb the crop without incurring substantial financial losses and compromising the quality of the crop. So I think the infrastructure is there, and that's only half of the equation. The other half is the scale of the harvest. So if you put the scale of the harvest with infrastructure issues, then we've got to look at options that farmers have. Now, there's off-farm storage, there's going to be on-farm storage, and that's going to be driven by the economics of it. And then we've got the whole spoilage issue. So if we have inadequate or improper storage, that can lead to a complete loss of a harvested crop. And moisture content's going to be your big one there. So what are the solutions? Well, you've got outdoor ground piles, you've got grain bags, you've got temporary indoor spaces, and then, of course, long-term on-farm investment. That's more than just a temporary solution, but that requires financing in many instances. Many farmers may not have the cash to do that, and so there are some USDA farm storage facility loan programs that are available, and I talk about that in my piece. What are the various loans that are out there? And then, of course, various technological innovations can help this. But a lot of these are not short-term solutions. These are going to be longer-term solutions to deal with a bumper crop. So I would encourage people to take a look at that piece and see what they think on that.
Roger, thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you for having me.
Again, that was K-State and Washburn Law Professor Roger McEowen as he covered Trump accounts and what producers can expect with this year's corn yields. I will be sure to link the resources that Roger mentioned in today's show on agtoday.net.